Mankind never forgets a favor, and their payback can shake worlds. Part 1. The desperate hour, the crystalline spires of Kethera Prime reflected the dying light of their twin suns. Once, those towers had shimmered with brilliant colors, singing harmonious frequencies that could be heard across the planet. Now they flickered weakly, their light dimming as the civilization that built them faced extinction. Elder Ethmir stood in the grand chamber of the Vraxel Council, his translucent body showing cracks that ran deep into his crystalline structure. Around him, the other elders displayed similar damage. The plague had spread faster than anyone predicted. What started as a minor discoloration in a few individuals had become a pandemic that threatened their entire species. The medical displays floating before them told a grim story. 800 million Vraxel were infected. The disease attacked their crystalline matrix, causing fractures that spread through their bodies like cracks in breaking glass. Once the fractures reached their core, death followed within hours. They had tried everything their science could offer. Nothing worked. A younger Vraxel named Shirakel entered the chamber, her surface still smooth and unblemished. She moved with the fluid grace of her kind, her body refracting light into rainbow patterns. But her harmonic voice carried despair when she spoke. Elder Kethmir, the Galactic Consortium, has responded to our request for aid. Kethmir's internal light pulsed with hope. What do they say? Shirakel's colors dimmed. They cite non-interference protocols. They say our plague is a natural phenomenon, and they cannot intervene in natural evolutionary processes. They offer their sympathies. The chamber fell silent except for the faint humming that Vraxel made when distressed. Sympathies meant nothing to the dying. The consortium had vast resources, advanced medicine, and the ability to help. But they chose procedure over compassion. Then we are alone, another elder said quietly. We should prepare our people for the end. Let us face extinction with dignity. Kethmir looked at the holographic star chart floating above them. The Vraxel had never been warriors or explorers. They were artists, philosophers, and engineers who worked with crystalline structures and harmonic frequencies. They had no allies, because they had never sought any. They had no military because they believed in peace. Now, that peaceful nature would be their doom. Send one final distress call, Kethmir ordered. Broadcast it on all frequencies. If there is anyone out there who values life over protocol, let them hear us. The message went out into the void, a desperate plea from a dying species. It traveled through the darkness of space, growing weaker with each light year. Most species who detected it ignored the signal. Some logged it as a curiosity. Others never heard it at all. But one ship did hear it, the human research vessel. Aurora's Promise was conducting mineral surveys in a supposedly empty sector when the distress call reached them. The ship was small by military standards, designed for science rather than combat. Its crew of 200 scientists and support staff had been mapping asteroid fields for 3 months. Finding the work tedious but necessary, Captain Alina Vasquez was reviewing survey data when her communications officer interrupted. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal. It's weak, but the translation algorithms are working on it. Alina straightened in her chair. She was a tall woman, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, her uniform showing the wear of long months in space. Play it. The message came through, translated into English by their AI systems. The voice was unlike anything Alina had heard before, like wind chimes speaking words. It told of plague, of death, of a species facing extinction. It begged for help from anyone who could hear location. Alina asked immediately. Kethera Prime, about 6 days away at maximum FTL. Alina's second officer, Lieutenant Commander Park, shook his head. Captain, we're a research vessel. We don't have the resources for a medical emergency of this scale. We should forward this to Earth and continue our mission. Alina looked at the star chart. 6 days. She thought about the message, about the desperation in that alien voice. She thought about 800 million people dying while bureaucrats debated proper protocols. No, she said firmly. We're going. Set course for Kethera Prime. Maximum speed. Park looked shocked. Captain, we'll be in violation of our mission parameters. Command is 6 weeks away by communication lag, Alina interrupted. By the time we get approval, everyone on that planet will be dead. We have medical facilities and some of the best researchers in human space aboard this ship. We're going to help. The Aurora's promise changed course, its engines burning hot as it raced toward Cathara Prime. In the medical bay, Dr. Marcus Webb assembled his team. Marcus was a thin man with graying hair and hands that never stopped moving. He had spent 30 years studying xenobiology, but he had never treated an alien patient. What do we know about them? He asked as his team gathered. They call themselves Vraxel, replied Dr. Sarah Chen, his lead researcher. They're crystalline-based life forms. Their biology is completely different from anything we've encountered. They don't have organs like we understand them. Their entire body is a complex, crystalline matrix. Marcus pulled up the medical data transmitted with the distress call. The images showed Vraxel bodies riddled with fractures, their crystalline structures breaking apart. It's like watching glass shatter in slow motion. What's causing it? Unknown, Sarah admitted. Could be viral, bacterial, or something we don't have a name for. We won't know until we examine them directly. The ship's AI interrupted their discussion. Dr. Webb, I have analyzed the Vraxel biology data. I believe our nanomedicine protocols may be adaptable to their crystalline matrix. Marcus looked up sharply. Nanomedicine was humanity's most recent breakthrough, using microscopic robots to repair damage at the cellular level. The technology was still experimental, barely tested even on humans. Using it on an alien species was unprecedented and dangerous. Show me, Marcus ordered. For the next 6 days? As the Aurora's promise raced through space, Marcus and his team worked without rest. They ran simulations, tested theories, and argued over approaches. The nanobots would need to be completely reprogrammed to work with crystalline structures instead of organic cells. One mistake could kill instead of cure. When they finally dropped out of FTL above Cathara Prime, the planet below looked beautiful and terrible. The crystalline cities caught the light of the twin suns, but their glow was fading. Massive sections of the cities stood dark and silent. Alina opened a communication channel. This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the human vessel Aurora's Promise. We received your distress call. We're here to help. The response came quickly, that strange harmonic voice filled with disbelief. You came. Across all that distance, you came. We are the Vraxel. We are dying. Can you truly help us? We're going to try, Alina replied. Prepare to receive our medical teams. The shuttles launched within the hour. Marcus led the first team down to the surface, his heart pounding as they descended through the atmosphere. When the shuttle doors opened, he stepped onto a world that looked like it was made of frozen music. The Vraxel who greeted them was Elder Kethmir himself. He towered over the humans, his crystalline body refracting light into patterns that hurt to look at directly. Deep cracks ran through his structure, and his internal light flickered weakly. I am Kethmir, the Elder said, his voice resonating through the air itself. You risk much by coming here. Our plague may be contagious to your kind. Marcus stepped forward without hesitation. We scanned for that. You're not contagious to us. Our biology is too different. Now please, we need to examine your people immediately. The Vraxel led them to medical facilities filled with the dying. Marcus had seen suffering before, but this was different. These beings were literally breaking apart, their bodies fracturing like dropped crystal. Some were already past saving, their cores shattered beyond repair. We start now, Marcus ordered his team. Sarah, begin the scans. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The work was intense and exhausting. The medical team examined dozens of Vraxel, taking samples, running tests, analyzing the crystalline structure of their bodies. What they discovered was both fascinating and horrifying. The plague was not a disease in any traditional sense. It was a resonance pattern, a specific harmonic frequency that destabilized the Vraxel crystalline matrix. Once it started, it spread through their bodies like a chain reaction. The Vraxel had tried to counter it with their own harmonic frequencies, but nothing worked. It's elegant in a terrible way, Sarah explained to Marcus. Their entire biology is based on harmonic resonance. This plague attacks that fundamental principle. Marcus looked at the data flowing across his screen. Can our nanobots adapt to it? I think so. If we program them to stabilize the crystalline matrix and emit a counter-resonance, they might stop the fracturing. But Marcus, we've never done anything like this. The risk? I know the risk, Marcus interrupted. But look around us. If we don't try, they all die. Program the nanobots. We test on volunteers first. Elder Kethmir volunteered immediately. I am old, he said simply. If this fails, I lose little. If it succeeds, I can tell my people that hope exists. The first injection was terrifying. Marcus watched as billions of microscopic robots entered Kethmir's crystalline body. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the cracks in the Elder's structure began to seal. The fractures closed, like wounds healing in fast forward. Kethmir's internal light grew stronger, brighter, until he blazed with the brilliance of a star. It works, Sarah breathed. Marcus, it actually works. The next 48 hours were chaos. The human medical teams worked around the clock, treating as many Varaxel as possible. More shuttles came down from the Aurora's Promise, bringing additional supplies and personnel. The entire ship's crew volunteered to help in any way they could. Captain Alina herself came down to coordinate the effort. She worked alongside her crew, moving supplies, comforting the sick, doing whatever needed to be done. She saw her ship's engineer, a gruff man named Rodriguez, teaching Vraxel children how to play cards while they waited for treatment. She saw her weapons officer helping to build temporary shelters for refugees from the hardest-hit cities. The Vraxel watched in wonder. These strange beings from a distant world asked for nothing. They simply helped, working until they collapsed from exhaustion, then getting up to work more. When Vraxel offered payment, the humans refused. When they offered treasures from their culture, the humans said they wanted only to see the Vraxel survive. Shirakel worked closely with Dr. Chen, translating medical information and helping coordinate treatment. As they worked together, they began to understand each other's cultures. Why do you do this? Shirakel asked during a brief rest period. You owe us nothing. You risk your careers, perhaps even legal troubles, with your own government. Why? Sarah looked at the young Vraxil and smiled tiredly. Because you need help, and we can provide it. Isn't that reason enough? On Earth, we have a saying. To save one life is to save the world entire. You're not just one life. You're 800 million lives, an entire civilization, a unique perspective on the universe. How could we not help? The treatment spread across the planet. Within a week, the plague was contained. Within 2 weeks, it was eradicated. The humans had shared not just the cure, but the knowledge of how to produce it. They taught the Vrixil about nanomedicine, showing them how to adapt the technology for their own use. In return, the Vraxils shared their understanding of harmonic crystalline engineering. They showed the humans how to manipulate matter using resonance frequencies, how to create structures that sang with internal harmonies. It was a fair exchange of knowledge between two species who had found unexpected friendship. When it came time for the Aurora's Promise to depart, the entire planet seemed to gather for the farewell. Elder Kethmir, now fully healed and shining with renewed life, stood before Captain Alina. You have saved our species, he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. Ask anything of us, anything at all, and it is yours. Alina shook her head. We ask for nothing, Elder Kethmir. We did what any decent beings would do. We helped because it was right. Kethmir's crystalline structure pulsed with emotion. Then let me say this. The Vrixil have long memories. We will remember what humanity did for us this day. We will remember across centuries if needed. If ever your people need us, we will answer. This I swear on behalf of all Vraxil. Alina smiled and extended her hand. Kethmir carefully touched it with one of his crystalline appendages, sealing the promise. I hope we never need to call on you, Alina said, but I accept your friendship gladly. May both our species prosper. As the Aurora's Promise lifted off from Cathara Prime, its crew watched the planet fall away below them. The crystalline cities were blazing with light again, singing their harmonic songs to the stars. 800 million lives had been saved, and a bond had been forged between two species who could not have been more different. Dr. Marcus. Webb stood beside Captain Alina on the bridge, looking at the receding planet. "We're going to be in so much trouble when we get back to Earth," he said with a tired laugh. Alina grinned. "Probably. But you know what? I don't care. We did the right thing. Sometimes that's more important than following orders." In the medical bay, Sarah Chen was compiling her reports when Shira Kell's final message came through. The young Vraxel had included detailed plans for harmonic, crystal technology, and a simple note, "For our friends among the stars. May this gift serve you as well as yours served us." The Aurora's promise jumped to FTL, carrying its crew home. Behind them, the Vraxel began rebuilding their civilization, forever changed by the encounter with humanity. They erected a monument in their capital city, a towering crystal spire that sang with internal harmonies. It was inscribed in both Vraxel and English. "Here stood humanity when we needed them most." Neither species knew it then, but they had created something rare in the galaxy, a true friendship based on compassion rather than mutual benefit. It was a bond that would be tested in ways neither could imagine. 200 years would pass before that test came. But when it did, the galaxy would learn an important lesson about humanity. They never forgot a favor, and their memory was very, very long. The gathering storm, 2 centuries passed like water flowing through time. The Varaxel rebuilt their civilization, incorporating the nanomedicine technology that humans had shared into every aspect of their society. Their crystalline cities grew taller and more beautiful, singing harmonies that could be heard from orbit. They became known across the galaxy as master engineers. Their harmonic crystal technology sought after by dozens of species, humanity too had changed. The Aurora's Promise incident had been controversial initially, with Captain Vasquez facing disciplinary hearings. But public opinion overwhelmingly supported her decision. The story of humans traveling across space to save a dying species captured imaginations across Earth and her colonies. It became a defining moment in human history. A story told to children about what humanity could be at its best. Earth's expansion into space accelerated. Human colonies spread across hundreds of worlds. The human fleet grew from a modest defense force into one of the most formidable military powers in known space. But humanity also became known as reliable allies, fair traders, and fierce defenders of those they called friends. The Vraxial and humans maintained contact throughout the centuries. Trade flourished between their worlds. Cultural exchanges brought Vraxel artists to Earth and human musicians to Cathera Prime. Mixed crews served on exploration vessels. Young humans studied harmonic engineering on Vraxel worlds, while Vraxel scientists worked in human research laboratories. But the galaxy was not a peaceful place. Empires rose and fell. Wars erupted over resources, territory, and ancient grudges. And in the outer rim of explored space, militaristic civilization called the Drakmor sovereignty grew powerful. The Drakmor were reptilian beings. Their scales as hard as armor plating, their culture built entirely around military strength. They believed that power justified dominance, that the strong had the right to rule the weak. They had conquered 40 star systems in 50 years, their armies sweeping aside any resistance. Supreme Commander Vexther stood on the bridge of his flagship domination, staring at the star chart before him. He was massive even by Drakmor standards, his scales dark as midnight, scarred from countless battles, his eyes cold and calculating. Studied the territories marked in red on the display. "The next target," the second-in-command asked. Vexter Esclawed finger pointed at a cluster of 3 star systems marked in blue. The Varaxel sovereignty. 8 inhabited worlds, minimal military capability, rich in resources and advanced technology. "The Varaxel are known friends of humanity," the second-in-command had warned. "The humans may object." Vexter's laugh was a harsh hissing sound. "The humans are far away, involved in their own border disputes with the Zynthian collective. By the time they even hear about our actions, the Varaxel will be conquered. Present the humans with an accomplished fact, and they will accept it. They are practical beings, for all their reputation. The Drakmor fleet assembled in secret, 800 warships gathering in empty space beyond scanner range. They were patient predators, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When that moment came, they moved with devastating speed. The invasion began without warning. Drakmor ships dropped out of FTL directly above Cathara Prime and 7 other Vraxel worlds simultaneously. Their first strikes targeted communication arrays and defense platforms. Within 30 minutes, the Vraxel were isolated from each other and the galaxy. Unable to call for help, Elder Coordinator Mathera watched in horror as Drakmor landing craft descended on her world of Vraxis II. She was young for a leader. Only 80 years old, her crystalline structure still clear and brilliant, but the light inside her dimmed with fear as she saw what was happening. The Vraxel had a small defense force, mostly patrol ships designed to handle pirates and smugglers. Against the Drakmor war machine, they were helpless. Vraxel ships that tried to resist were destroyed in seconds. Those that surrendered were boarded and their crews taken prisoner. On Cathara Prime itself, the situation was even more desperate. Drakmor soldiers marched through the crystalline cities, their heavy footsteps cracking the harmonic pavements. They rounded up Vraxel civilians, herding them into containment areas. When some Varaxel tried to resist peacefully, using their harmonic frequencies to communicate their protest, the Drakmor simply shot them. The Elder Council met an emergency session in an underground bunker beneath the capital. Most of the elders who had lived through the plague were dead now, their long lives finally ended. But Elder Kethror, a direct descendant of the Kethmir who had met the humans, represented that generation's memory. "We must surrender," one elder said, his harmonic voice breaking with despair. "We cannot fight them. We are not warriors. If we resist, they will slaughter us all," another elder disagreed. "If we surrender, we become slaves. The Drakmor do not show mercy to the conquered. They will strip our worlds of resources and force our people to work until we die. At least if we fight, we die free." Kethra listened to the debate, his ancient structure showing cracks from stress. He thought about his ancestors' stories, about the humans who had come when the Vraxel were dying. He thought about the promise that had been made 200 years ago. "There may be another option," he said quietly. The council chamber fell silent, all attention turning to the ancient elder. 200 years ago, when our species faced extinction, humanity saved us. They asked for nothing in return. But before they left, they made a promise. They said if we ever needed them, they would answer. Hope flickered in some of the elders, but others shook their heads. "That was 2 centuries ago," one said. "Those humans are long dead. Their descendants may not honor that ancient promise." "Then we find out," Kethra replied firmly. "We have nothing to lose. If the humans do not come, we are no worse off than we are now. But if they remember, if they honor their word, then perhaps we survive." A younger Vraxel named Shiramir, a descendant of the Shirakel who had worked with Dr. Chen, stepped forward. She had spent years studying human culture and history, fascinated by these strange beings who had saved her ancestors. "I can send the message," she offered. "I know their protocols, their communication frequencies. But Elder Kethra, what do we say? Do we beg for help? Do we remind them of the debt?" Kethra's crystalline structure pulsed with thought. "No, we do neither. The humans who came to us 200 years ago did not want gratitude or obligation. They helped because it was right. So we simply tell them the truth. We tell them what is happening. We tell them goodbye. And if they choose to remember us, if they choose to come, that will be their decision." Shiramir worked through the night in a hidden communication bunker. Drakmor forces were systematically destroying Varaxel communication equipment.
Ow.
But she found an old emergency transmitter that they had overlooked. It was ancient technology, barely functional. But it would have to be enough. She composed the message carefully, making it simple and honest. She did not ask for help. She did not demand that humanity honor old promises. She simply stated facts and said goodbye. The message was brief. To our friends among the stars. This is Shiramir of Cathara Prime. The Drakmor sovereignty has invaded our worlds. we cannot resist them. Our species faces conquest and enslavement. We do not ask for help, for we know you have your own challenges. We simply wanted you to know that the children of Kethera remember their friends. We remember the kindness shown to us when we were dying. We remember Captain Elena Vasquez and Dr. Marcus Webb and all who came to our aid. As we face this darkness, we hold those memories close. Thank you for teaching us that compassion exists in the universe. Farewell. She sent the message on every frequency she could access, broadcasting it toward known human space. Then she destroyed the transmitter to prevent the Drakmor from tracking it. Whether the message would reach humanity, whether they would care if it did, she had no way of knowing. On Earth, it was a normal political day. The United Earth Assembly was in session, debating trade agreements and colony expansion plans. President James Okonkwo sat through the discussions with practiced patience. He was a tall man with iron-gray hair, known for his calm demeanor and strategic thinking. His chief of staff interrupted the session, whispering urgently in his ear. President Okonkwo's face changed, his calm expression shifting to shock, then to something harder, more determined. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, standing abruptly, "I apologize for the interruption, but I have just received information that requires immediate attention." The assembly quieted, sensing the change in his tone. President Okonkwo activated the main display screen, and Shira Mir's message played for everyone to hear. The chamber was absolutely silent as they listened to the Vraxel's goodbye. When the message ended, silence stretched for long seconds. Then President Okonkwo spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 200 years ago, a human captain made a decision that saved 800 million lives. The Vraxel have never forgotten that act. They have been steadfast friends to humanity ever since. Now they face destruction, and they send us not a demand for help, not a reminder of debts owed, but a simple goodbye. They expect nothing from us. He paused, looking around the assembly at the representatives from hundreds of human worlds. But I expect something from us. I expect us to be the species that Captain Vasquez showed the galaxy we could be. I expect us to honor the bonds we have formed. I expect us to remember our friends. The president's voice grew stronger, more forceful. I am invoking Protocol Aurora, established 2 centuries ago for precisely this situation. This protocol states that if the Vraxel ever face existential threat, humanity will respond with full force. No debate, no hesitation. We answer. A representative from Mars stood up. "Mr. President, with respect, that protocol was written 200 years ago. The galaxy has changed. We have our own problems, our own threats. The Drakmor sovereignty is powerful. Are we prepared to risk war with them?" President Okonkwo met her eyes steadily. "Yes, because if we don't stand with our friends when they need us, then what are we? Just another empire looking out for ourselves." The Vraxel showed us compassion when they could have ignored a distant distress call. Captain Vasquez showed them humanity at its best. Now it's our turn to prove that wasn't a fluke, that humanity truly is a species worth believing in. Another representative from Europa stood. "I remember my grandmother telling me about the Perseverance incident." Wait, wrong story. "I remember learning about the Aurora's promise in school. Every human child knows that story. If we turn our backs on the Vraxel now, we're not just abandoning them. We're abandoning who we claim to be." The vote was called. Protocol Aurora required a supermajority to activate, 75% of the assembly voting yes. The president called for electronic voting to speed the process. The results appeared on the display. Screen 97% in favor. President Okonkwo nodded once, satisfied. "So be it. Contact Fleet Command. I want the 3rd and 5th battle groups mobilized within 24 hours. Begin recall of all reserve ships and personnel. Send a message to every human colony. The Vraxel need us, and we are going." Within hours, the mobilization began. It was the fastest military deployment in human history. Warships that were on patrol were recalled. Ships in docks were rushed through final preparations. Crews on leave were contacted and ordered to report immediately. Admiral Sarad Kamithi received her orders while overseeing fleet exercises near the Proxima system. She was the great-granddaughter of a medical officer who had served on the Aurora's Promise. The stories of that mission had shaped her entire life. Now, she would command the largest human fleet ever assembled in a combat operation. "All ships, new orders," she broadcast to her fleet. "We are proceeding immediately to Veraxel space. The Drakmor sovereignty has invaded our allies. We are going to throw them out. Make ready for extended combat operations." Her second-in-command, Captain David Torres, looked concerned. "Admiral, the Drakmor have 800 ships in that sector. We're mobilizing 600. Even with our technological advantages, those odds are not favorable." Admiral Kimothy smiled grimly. "Then we'll just have to be creative. The Drakmor fight like most species in the galaxy, straightforward, predictable, focused on overwhelming force. We're going to show them why you should never underestimate humans who are protecting their friends." Across human space, the response was overwhelming. Not just military personnel, but civilians wanted to help. Shipping companies volunteered cargo vessels to move supplies. Manufacturing plants shifted to round-the-clock production of ammunition and spare parts. Medical organizations prepared trauma teams to deploy with the fleet. On Mars, a retired captain named Rodriguez, grandson of the Aurora's Promise engineer, came out of retirement and took command of a destroyer. On Europa, volunteers flooded recruitment centers. On Earth itself, crowds gathered in the streets, not to protest the war, but to show support for the troops deploying to help the Veraxel. A news reporter interviewed an elderly woman named Chen, who had been a child when her grandmother, Dr. Sarah Chen, returned from Cathara Prime. "My grandmother worked 48 hours straight to save the Veraxel," she said, tears in her eyes. "She always told us that the Veraxel taught her something important, that being truly strong means helping those weaker than you, not exploiting them. Now it's our turn to be strong for them." The human fleet gathered at the staging point. 600 warships representing 2 full battle groups, plus dozens of volunteer vessels. It was an impressive sight, the largest gathering of human military power since the colony wars 50 years earlier. The ships hung in space like a cloud of metal and firepower, their crews ready for battle. Admiral Kimothy stood on the bridge of her flagship, the dreadnought Indomitable Will, looking at the tactical display showing her entire fleet. She opened a channel to all ships. "This is Admiral Kimothy to all vessels. In a few hours, we will jump to Veraxel space. When we arrive, we will face an enemy that believes might makes right, that the strong can take what they want from the weak. They have invaded the worlds of a peaceful species that showed humanity compassion in our hour of need. They expect us to do nothing. They think we are too far away, too busy with our own concerns, too practical to risk war for sentiment." She paused, letting her words sink in. "They are wrong. We are going to show them that humanity remembers. We are going to show them that when you attack our friends, you attack us. And we are going to show them that sometimes the most practical thing to do is to stand by your principles no matter what the cost." Admiral Kimothy's voice grew harder, more intense. "The Veraxel gave us harmonic crystal technology that revolutionized our engineering. They shared their art and culture with us. They have been true friends for 200 years. But even if they had given us nothing, even if we had never benefited from knowing them, we would still go. Because they needed help and we could provide it. That's what Captain Vasquez taught us 2 centuries ago. That's who we are." She looked at her crew, seeing their determination reflected back at her. "All ships, prepare for FTL jump. Next stop, Cathara Prime. Let's go get our friends." The fleet jumped as one, 600 warships vanishing from normal space in a flash of distorted light. They raced across 2,000 light-years of space, covering in days a distance that would have taken months just a century earlier. On Cathara Prime, the situation had grown desperate. Drakmor forces controlled all major cities. Veraxel civilians were being forced to work in mining operations, extracting rare crystals from deep beneath the planet's surface. Those who resisted were killed. Those who worked were slowly breaking under the strain, their crystalline structures developing fractures from exhaustion and stress. Shiramir worked in one of those mines. Her once brilliant structure, now dull and cracked. She had sent her message and expected nothing. The humans were far away. They had their own problems. Why would they risk everything for an old friendship? But she remembered the stories her ancestor had told. Stories of humans who worked until they collapsed, who shared everything they had, who refused payment for saving an entire species. Maybe, just maybe, they would remember Supreme Commander Vexter stood in his command center on the captured Varaxel orbital station, reviewing reports from his occupation forces. Everything was proceeding as planned. The Varaxel were broken, their resistance crushed. Within a year, these worlds would be fully integrated into the Drakmor sovereignty. His communication officer interrupted his thoughts. "Commander, we're detecting an anomaly. Multiple FTL signatures incoming." Vexthar barely looked up. "Probably Varaxel refugees running away." "Ignore them. Sir, the signatures are wrong. These are not Varaxel ships. The displacement is massive." "I'm reading." "Commander, I'm reading 600 vessels incoming." Now Vexthar paid attention. He turned to the display, watching as the sensor data resolved. 600 ships dropping out of FTL at the edge of the system. The computer identified their signatures. Human. All of them were human. Vexthar stared at the display in disbelief. That's impossible. The humans are involved in a border dispute. They cannot spare this many ships. This must be a mistake, but it was no mistake. The human fleet had arrived. They had come ready for war. Admiral Kimothy watched as her fleet deployed from FTL, their formation perfect despite the long journey. The Drakmor vessels were scattered across the system, occupying the Varaxel worlds. They were not prepared for this. "Communications, broadcast on all frequencies," Admiral Kimothy ordered. "I want the Drakmor and the Varaxel to hear this." Right. The channel opened. Admiral Kimothy's voice carried across space. "Transmitted to every ship and every planet in the system. This is Admiral Sarah Kimothy of the United Earth Defense Force, Drakmor Sovereignty Forces. You are hereby ordered to withdraw from all Varaxel worlds immediately. You have 12 hours to begin evacuation. Any forces remaining after that deadline will be removed by force." She paused, then continued. "To the Varaxel, the children of Earth have not forgotten. We heard your message. We have come. Hold on just a little longer. Help has arrived." On the Drakmor flagship, Vexthar recovered from his shock and began issuing orders. "All ships, combat formation. Prepare to engage. Send a message to High Command. We are under attack by human forces." He opened a channel to the human fleet, his voice dripping with contempt. "Admiral Kimothy, you have made a grave mistake. You are outnumbered and far from home. We have 800 ships in this sector. Your 600 cannot defeat us. Withdraw now, and we will overlook this intrusion." Admiral Kimothy's response was immediate and cold. "Commander, you are about to learn why humanity earned its reputation. We came here to free our friends. You can leave voluntarily, or we can make you leave. The choice is yours, but I promise you this, one way or another. No. The Drakmor will not be on these worlds 24 hours from now." Vexthar's laugh was harsh. Bold words for someone about to die. "Very well, human. You want war? You shall have it." He closed the channel and turned to his fleet commanders. "Destroy them. Show the galaxy what happens to species who interfere with the Drakmor sovereignty." The battle lines were drawn. 800 Drakmor warships moved into attack positions, their formations tight and disciplined. They were confident in their power, certain of victory. They had no idea what was about to hit them. Admiral Kimothy looked at her tactical display, analyzing the Drakmor positions. She smiled coldly. "All ships," she broadcast. "Execute battle plan, hammer, and anvil. Let's show them how humans fight." The human fleet surged forward, and the Battle of Cathara Prime began. When humanity answers, the opening moments of the Battle of Cathara Prime did not go as Supreme Commander Vexthar expected. He anticipated the humans would advance in standard fleet formation, establishing battle lines where superior numbers would decide the outcome. That was how civilized species fought wars in the galaxy, the organization and predictable tactics. Humanity had other ideas. Instead of forming battle lines, the human fleet scattered, not in retreat or confusion, but with clear purpose. Ships broke into small groups called wolf packs, each consisting of 3 to 5 vessels that moved in perfect coordination with each other. "What are they doing?" Vexter demanded, watching the tactical display in confusion. "They're abandoning formation. They're giving up their defensive cohesion." His tactical officer looked equally puzzled. "It appears to be chaos, Commander. Perhaps their discipline broke under the pressure of facing our superior numbers." But it was not chaos. It was calculated precision. Admiral Kimothy watched from the indomitable will as her plan unfolded. "Commander Torres, status on the drone deployment?" "First wave launching now, Admiral. 30,000 drones deploying across the battle space." The drones were small, barely larger than a human fist, but each carried sophisticated sensors and communication equipment. They spread through the space between the two fleets like a swarm of metallic insects, creating a sensor network that gave every human ship perfect awareness of the battlefield. "Drakmor fleet is advancing in standard attack formation," Torres reported. "They're moving to engage our nearest wolf packs." "Perfect," Admiral Kimethi said. "Execute Phase 2. The Drakmor vessels moved forward confidently, their heavy guns charging. They outnumbered the human forces they were targeting 10 to 1. It should have been a massacre. Then the human ships disappeared. Not literally. But they activated their newest stealth technology, borrowed and adapted from Vraxel harmonic crystal engineering. The crystals disrupted sensor returns, making the human ships appear to be in multiple locations at once or in none at all. The Drakmor targeting systems went haywire, trying to lock onto ghosts and shadows. Before the Drakmor could adapt, the humans struck. Not from where they appeared to be, but from completely different vectors. Missiles screamed out of the darkness, guided by the drone network to find weaknesses in Drakmor shields. Railguns fired solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. Punching through armor with kinetic force that shields could not stop, a Drakmor cruiser exploded. Its reactor breached by a railgun shot that came from an angle they had not been defending. 2 more ships took critical damage as human vessels appeared behind them, having used the sensor confusion to maneuver into position. "They're using some kind of stealth technology," Vexter's tactical officer reported. "Our sensors cannot get reliable locks." "Then fire without locks," Vexter snarled. "Saturate the area with weapons fire." "They cannot hide from everything." The Drakmor fleet opened fire in all directions, filling space with energy beams and explosive projectiles. It was a crude tactic, but effective against most enemies. Except the humans were not where the Drakmor thought they were. The human wolf packs moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. When the Drakmor fired at one position, the humans were already elsewhere, setting up their next attack. It was three-dimensional combat at its finest, using the vast emptiness of space as an advantage rather than an obstacle. Wolfpack 7. "You have 3 Drakmor destroyers converging on your position," Admiral Kimothy transmitted to one of her units. "Acknowledged," came the response from Captain Martinez aboard the destroyer Swift Vengeance. Pack 7 engaging. Martinez's 3 ships moved in perfect coordination. The destroyers Swift Vengeance and Rapid Strike drew the Drakmor attention, appearing on sensors just long enough to make them commit to the attack. Meanwhile, the frigate Shadow Dancer used its smaller size and superior stealth to circle behind the Drakmor vessels when the trap sprung. It was devastating. Shadow Dancer's missiles hit the rear shields of all 3 Drakmor ships simultaneously, while Swift Vengeance and Rapid Strike hammered their front shields. Caught in the crossfire, the Drakmor destroyers tried to maneuver, but were too slow. 2 were crippled, their engines destroyed. The 3rd tried to flee but ran directly into another human wolf pack waiting in ambush across the battle space. Similar engagements played out. The human forces used the Drakmor numbers against them, drawing ships into traps where local superiority meant nothing. The drone network coordinated everything, allowing human commanders to see the entire battlefield and position their forces with impossible precision on Kethera Prime. The Vrxil and the forced labor camps looked up as flashes of light appeared in the orbital space above them. The Drakmor guards were distracted, watching the battle with growing concern. Shiramir felt hope surge through her. Crystalline structure for the first time in weeks? They came, she whispered to the Vraxel working beside her. The humans actually came. Word spread through the camps like wildfire. The humans had arrived. Their friends had not forgotten them. Vraxel, who had been broken by weeks of abuse, suddenly found strength they did not know they possessed. They began to resist, small acts of defiance that the distracted Drakmor guards struggled to control. In orbit, the battle intensified. Vexter threw more ships into the fight, calling in reinforcements from the other occupied Vraxel worlds. His numerical advantage was significant, and surely it would tell eventually. But as the hours passed, he watched his advantage erode. The humans were not trying to destroy every Drakmor ship. Instead, they focused on crippling vessels, destroying engines and weapon systems, while leaving life support intact. Disabled Drakmor ships floated through the battle space, their crews alive but helpless. It was a deliberate tactic that served multiple purposes. First, tied up Drakmor resources, as they had to deploy rescue ships for disabled vessels. Second, it created navigational hazards that constrained Drakmor movements. Third, it sent a message. Humanity could have slaughtered them all, but chose mercy instead. That psychological impact was worth more than any weapon. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," Torres reported. "It's coming from one of the labor camps." "Let's put it through," Admiral Kimothi ordered. A Vraxel voice came through, weak but determined. It was Shiramir. "Human ships. This is Shiramir of Kethera Prime. The Drakmor have thousands of our people in labor camps on the surface. If they believe they are losing, they may kill the prisoners rather than let them be freed. Please, you must help them." Admiral Kimothi felt cold fury wash over her. Taking hostages, threatening civilians. The Drakmor were even worse than intelligence reports suggested. "Shiramir, we hear you," Admiral Kimothi responded. "Help is already on the way. Tell your people to be ready. Liberation is coming." She switched to her Marine Command channel. "Colonel Reeves, you are cleared for planetary assault. Execute Operation Thunderbolt." Colonel Angela Reeves had been waiting for those orders. She commanded the 7th Marine Expeditionary Force, 10,000 of humanity's finest soldiers, trained for rapid deployment and hostile environment operations. They were loaded into assault shuttles, ready to drop. "All units, this is Reeves," she broadcast to her force. "Our mission is to liberate the Vraxel labor camps. Rules of engagement: Drakmor forces who surrender will be taken prisoner. Those who resist will be eliminated. Those who harm prisoners will face immediate justice. Remember why we're here. We're getting our friends out. Move fast, hit hard, show no mercy to those who show no mercy." The assault shuttles launched in waves, diving toward Kethera Prime's atmosphere. Drakmor orbital defenses tried to engage them, but human fighters ran interference, their superior maneuverability allowing them to dominate the orbital space. Sergeant Ina Rodriguez led the first shuttle down. She was a stocky woman with scars on her face from a dozen battles, but her eyes were gentle when she talked about the mission briefings she had attended. She had learned about the Aurora's Promise incident in school like every human child. Now she had the chance to continue that legacy. 2 minutes to landing, the pilot announced. AA fire is heavy but not organized. They weren't expecting this, Good Anna said, checking her weapon one final time. "Let's keep them off balance. Remember, we're here to save people, not rack up kills. Every Vraxel we get out alive is a victory." Her squad nodded, their faces set with determination. These were volunteers all, Marines who had specifically requested this mission. When the call went out for forces to deploy to Vraxel's space, recruitment centers had been overwhelmed with applicants. The shuttles hit the ground hard, their doors blowing open before they fully stopped. Anna was first out, her boots hitting crystalline pavement as she scanned for threats. The labor camp spread out before her, surrounded by fencing and guard towers. Drakmor soldiers were scrambling to organize a defense, but the human assault had caught them completely unprepared. "Breaching teams, take down those fences," Anna ordered. "Fire teams, suppress those guard towers. Medics, prepare to receive casualties. Move, move, move." The human Marines moved with practiced efficiency. Demolition charges blew holes in the fencing. Precision fire from human marksmen took out Drakmor guards in the towers before they could bring their heavy weapons to bear. Within 90 seconds of landing, the humans had breached the perimeter. Inside the camp, the Vraxel prisoners watched in amazement as human soldiers poured through the gaps in the fence. These strange beings they had not seen in 200 years, now coming to their rescue with weapons and determination. "Everyone stay calm," Anna broadcast in Vraxel, her suit's translator handling the language. "We're human Marines. We're here to get you out. Follow our directions and stay behind our lines. We'll handle the guards." Shiramir stepped forward from the crowd of prisoners, her crystalline structure badly cracked, but her mind still sharp. "There are 5,000 Varaxel in this camp," she said quickly. "The Drakmor commander threatened to execute us if there was any rescue attempt. He has explosives placed throughout the camp." On his expression hardened. "Where is this commander?" "The main administration building, at the camp center." "Right. 3rd Squad with me. We're taking down that commander before he can trigger anything. Everyone else, get these people to the shuttles. Anyone who can walk helps those who can't. Let's move." Anna led her squad through the camp at a run. Drakmor soldiers tried to stop them, but human training and equipment proved superior. The Marines moved like a well-oiled machine, covering each other's advances. Suppressing enemy fire with overwhelming precision, they reached the administration building to find it barricaded. The Drakmor commander was inside with a dozen elite guards, holding the detonator for the camp explosives. "Says he'll blow the camp if we try to breach," Anna's translator specialist reported. Listening to the Drakmor communications, Anna smiled grimly. "Tell him we're not breaching. Tell him we're leaving." She pulled her squad back to a safe distance, then nodded to her demolitions expert. "Corporal Kim, you're up." Corporal Kim deployed a small drone that flew up to the administration building's roof. It carried a cutting charge designed to breach starship holes. When it detonated, it cut through the building's roof like butter. Dropping into the commander's position from above, where he wasn't expecting it, the explosion was precise and controlled. The Drakmor commander and his guards were neutralized instantly. Anna's squad rushed in to secure the detonator before any backup triggers could activate. "Explosives secured," Anna reported. "Camp is clear. Beginning full evacuation." Across Cathara Prime, similar operations unfolded. Human Marines hit every labor camp simultaneously, coordinating their assaults to prevent the Drakmor from executing their prisoners. It was the largest hostage rescue operation in human military history, and it was succeeding beyond expectations. The Varaxel prisoners were loaded onto shuttles and lifted to orbit, where human medical ships waited to treat them. Many were severely injured, their crystalline structures fractured from abuse and overwork. Human doctors, working alongside the few Varaxel medical personnel who had survived, began emergency treatment. Dr. James Chen, great-great-grandson of Sarah Chen from the original Aurora's Promise mission, worked frantically in one medical bay. Around him, injured Varaxel lay on specialized beds designed for their crystalline physiology. "We're using the same nanomedicine protocols from 200 years ago," he explained to his team. "Modified and improved, but the same basic principles. These people's ancestors were saved by my ancestor. Now we return the favor." One of his patients, an elderly Varaxel named Kureth, looked up at him with dimming eyes. "You are Dr. Chen's descendant?" James nodded, carefully injecting nanobots into the Vrexel's fractured structure. "I am. She saved my life when I was young," Kureth said weakly. "I was one of the first treated during the plague. I never thought I would meet one of her line." "Thank you. Thank you for coming. We promised we would," James replied simply. Humanity keeps its promises. In orbit, the space battle reached its climax. The Drakmor fleet, demoralized by heavy losses and the successful human planetary assault, began to break. Individual ships started to retreat rather than face destruction. Vexer tried to rally them, but the tide had turned. Admiral Kimothy opened a channel to the Drakmor flagship. "Commander Vexter, you have lost. Your fleet is shattered, your ground forces are surrendering, and the Vraxel are free." I am offering you one chance. Withdraw now with the ships you have left, or we destroy every single Drakmor vessel in this system." Vexter stared at his tactical display. He had started the battle with 800 ships. Now he had barely 300 operational, and more were being disabled every minute. The human fleet had taken losses too, about 50 ships destroyed or crippled. But they still had overwhelming superiority. Pride warred with survival instinct. Finally, survival won. "We withdraw," Vexter transmitted bitterly. "But this is not over, human. The Drakmor sovereignty will remember this insult." "Good," Admiral Kamithi replied coldly. "Remember it well. Remember what happens when you attack species under human protection. Remember that humanity has a very long memory, and we never forget our friends. Now get out of this system before I change my mind about letting you live." The surviving Drakmor ships retreated, jumping to FTL as quickly as their damaged engines allowed. The Battle of Cathara Prime was over. Humanity had won. As the last Drakmor vessel vanished from sensors, a cheer went up across the human fleet. They had done it. Against superior numbers, they had defeated a major military power and liberated their allies. But Admiral Kamithi did not cheer. She looked at the casualty reports from both space and ground operations. 50 ships lost meant thousands of human dead. Many more were wounded. The victory had cost them dearly. Yet when she thought about the alternative, about abandoning the Vraxel to slavery and death, she knew the price had been worth it. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vraxel Elder Council," Torres reported. "They're asking permission to come aboard." "Granted," Admiral Kamithi replied. "Let's go meet our friends." An hour later, she stood in the Indomitable Will's main hangar as a Vraxel shuttle docked. The airlock opened, and Elder Kethro stepped through, moving slowly on his ancient frame. Behind him came other elders and Shiramir. Freed from the labor camp and already treated for her injuries, Kethra approached Admiral Kamithi and stopped. His crystalline structure pulsed with emotion, color swirling through his transparent form. 200 years ago," he said, his harmonic voice shaking, "humans saved my people when we were dying of plague. My ancestor promised that the Vraxel would remember. We have. And today you proved that humanity remembers too." He carefully knelt before her, a profound gesture of respect in Vraxel culture. "You came across impossible distances. You risked war with a powerful enemy. You spent lives and resources to save us. How can we ever repay such a debt?" Admiral Kamithi reached out and gently touched the old Vraxel's crystalline shoulder, helping him stand. "Elder Kethra, there is no debt. That's what friendship means. You help each other when needed without keeping score." Shiramir stepped forward. "Admiral, I sent that message expecting nothing. I thought perhaps you might remember us fondly, but I never believed you would come." "Why did you?" Admiral Kamothi smiled. "Because 200 years ago, a Vraxel merchant fleet dumped their entire cargo to save human strangers. Because your people asked for nothing and gave everything. Because you showed us what true compassion looks like." You paused. "And because we are human. We might be scattered across 100 worlds. We might argue about politics and economics and everything else. But there is one thing every human agrees on. We stand by our friends. Always." Over the following weeks, the human fleet remained in Vraxel space, helping to rebuild and establish proper defenses. Human engineers worked alongside Vraxel to construct modern defense platforms. Human military advisors trained Vraxel defense forces. Human merchants brought supplies and resources for reconstruction, but the relationship went deeper than military aid. Cultural exchanges flourished. Vraxel artists came to human ships to share their harmonic sculptures. Human musicians learned to compose pieces that Vraxel crystalline structures could sing. Mixed crews began serving on patrol vessels, learning to work together seamlessly. The story of the Battle of Cathara Prime spread across the galaxy at light speed. Other species watched in amazement as humanity deployed such massive force to help a relatively minor ally. Political analysts debated the strategic implications. But most species learned a simpler lesson. Humanity remembered kindness and repaid it 1,000-fold. The Drakmor sovereignty, humiliated by their defeat, withdrew from aggressive expansion. They learned that the galaxy was more complicated than they thought. That raw military power could be defeated by tactics and determination. And that attacking the friends of humanity was a very bad idea. On Earth, President Okonkwo addressed the planet. "We lost good people in this operation," he said solemnly. "Thousands died to free the Vraxel. I grieve for every life lost. But I want their families to know something. They died proving that humanity is more than just another species scrambling for territory and resources. They died proving that we are beings who honor our commitments, who stand by our friends, who believe that some things are more important than profit or safety." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "The Vraxel saved us 200 years ago. Today, we saved them. That is who we are. That is who we will always be. And I promise every species in the galaxy, if you show humanity kindness, if you stand with us in our dark times, we will remember. We will remember for centuries if needed. And when your dark time comes, we will be there." The reconstruction of Vraxel space took years. Human and Vraxel worked side by side, building something new. The Vraxel incorporated human military technology and tactical doctrine. Humanity gained advanced harmonic engineering techniques. Together, they became stronger than either species alone. 50 years after the battle, a grand monument was unveiled on Cathera Prime. It stood in the exact spot where the first human Marine had landed during the liberation. The monument showed a human and a Vraxel standing back to back. Facing outward, defenders together, the inscription read, "They came when we were dying. We remembered. They came when we were enslaved. We will never forget." This is the bond between Vraxel and humanity, eternal, unbreakable. Forged in compassion and sealed in blood. At the ceremony, elderly Sergeant Anna Rodriguez, now a decorated general, stood beside Shiramir, who had become the Vraxel ambassador to Earth. They had become close friends over the decades, their bond representing the larger friendship between their species. "Do you think they'll remember?" Anna asked quietly, looking at the young Vraxel and human children gathered for the ceremony. "In another 200 years, will they still remember why this matters?" Shiramir's crystalline structure pulsed with warm colors. "They will remember because we will teach them. Every generation will learn the story. How humans saved us from plague. How we remained friends. How you came when we faced slavery. These stories will be told forever." She looked at Anna with her multifaceted eyes. "But more than the stories, they will remember the lesson, that kindness given freely creates bonds stronger than any alliance treaty. That protecting those weaker than yourself is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. That some debts are too precious to ever truly repay, so instead, you pass them forward." Anna smiled. "Your ancestor, the original Shirakel, said something similar to my ancestor's ancestor 200 years ago. Funny how wisdom stays consistent across time." "It's not wisdom," Shiramir replied. "It's love. We love our human friends. You love us. That love transcends politics, transcends distance, transcends time itself." The ceremony concluded with a traditional Vraxel harmony and a human chorus singing together, their voices and resonances blending into something beautiful and new. It was a sound that neither species could create alone, but together it was magnificent. In the crowd, young humans and Vraxel listened together, learning the story that would define both their civilizations. They learned about Captain Vasquez and Dr. Webb, about Elder Kethmir and Admiral Kamothi, about all those who had built this friendship across 2 centuries, and they learned the most important lesson of all, that the galaxy was a harsh place, but it could also be a place of profound connection. That species separated by biology and distance could still find common ground. That a favor given 200 years ago could reshape worlds when it came time to repay it. The galaxy had learned to... Other species saw what happened when you helped humanity, how that kindness was remembered and returned. They also saw what happened to those who attacked humanity's friends. The Drakmor defeat had sent shockwaves through galactic politics. A new order was emerging. One based not just on military might or economic power, but on proven loyalty and mutual support. The Human-Varaxel alliance became a model for other species to follow. Years turned to decades, decades to centuries. The bond between the two species only grew stronger. Human children grew up learning Varaxel harmonic principles. Varaxel young studied human tactical thinking and medicine. Mixed colonies were established where both species lived together, and always the stories were told. The story of the Aurora's promise, racing across space to save a dying species. The story of the Battle of Kethera Prime, when humanity mobilized half its fleet to free their friends. The story of two species who proved that, in the darkness of space, compassion and loyalty were the greatest forces of all. Humanity had learned an important lesson. 200 years ago from the Varaxel, that true strength means helping those in need without expecting reward. Now they had taught that lesson back to the galaxy in the most powerful way possible. They had kept their promise. They had remembered. And in doing so, they had changed not just their own fate, or the fate of the Varaxel, but the fate of the entire galaxy, because sometimes a single act of kindness, remembered and repaid, can indeed shake worlds, and humanity never, ever forgot a favor.